Hi everybody, this is going to be an intimate conversation about what we can do to make an existing website a mobile-friendly website. The problem is fairly common in the sense that every website needs to have, for strict business reasons, to have a mobile-friendly interface, because it's getting more and more annoying for users to go to a website and then have to work with fingers to enlarge. No matter that we buy and use larger and larger screens, devices with larger and larger screens, but fact is that sort of no zoom manifesto that hopefully says, well, there should be a way. It should be the business that drives companies to invest in having a mobile-friendly set of pages, maybe representing only a subset of the functionalities of the full site, but taking into account who happens to visit a website using a mobile device. Maybe I'm playing here the role of a Cassandra, so the person that, according to mythology, was looking into the future, telling people about the future, telling people about the true future, but she was condemned by some god not to be believed. But I really make a prediction that in the end, offering a poor mobile experience may compromise. I'm not saying it's going to, but may definitely compromise a business, and for sure offering a nice mobile experience to users coming your way through a website is a significant point that can put you ahead of your competitors. The same, for what it matters, I don't know if it's good or bad, but for what it matters, the same concept has been expressed no later than last year, about a year ago, by Forbes.com. They declared 2014 the year of responsive web design, and they used exactly this argument. The point is, okay, let's say that we all agree that you risk, especially if the website is critical to the business you run. Taken for granted this argument that you have to do something in order to make the whole thing mobile friendly. The next problem becomes how you do that. Now, mostly depends on the type of industry, the type of business you're in. Hotel, airports, wireless providers, back office sites, even news sites may even survive with the full site and then force users to just use Zoom on small devices, smartphone in particular. I mean, I still have to find a hotel that allows you to connect to the wireless, offering a page that is mobile specific. It doesn't force you to binge and Zoom. Yet, I still book hotels or airports. Same story. If you have to connect to the free wireless, well, it's not so usual to find a website, a mobile website, optimized website on airports, yet you fly and you don't choose an airport or skip an airport, avoid an airport because it doesn't have a mobile page. So this point doesn't hold true for all types of business. But again, if the website is crucial to the business you do, this is definitely a point. If you sell goods, you must be able to offer a good mobile experience. Not coincidentally, in this slide you see two distinct things. You see something that, I mean, in my mind, I'm not a graphic, but intends to represent native applications and then websites. But also, this is the classic schema, classic graphics you use for indicating responsive site, one site responsive. This also attempted to transmit the idea that you have something different from tablets and for smartphones. So there are quite a few problems related to making mobile-friendly a website. Before we get into the details of this, let me spend a couple more minutes discussing the fundamental two options you have to provide a mobile strategy, to set up a mobile strategy, where mobile in this case means just mobile. So you can have the mobile app approach, so creating a native app. Or you can improve the website you already have in order to make it friend of devices. The point is that these are not necessarily two mutually exclusive options. One doesn't exclude the other. And I would say even more, if I have to pick up just one, I would take this. Most of the time I would take this. That if you're Instagram, you could take this. But Instagram is, and similar kinds of businesses, they are particular because they start from an application idea. So that's really a different kind of thing. But if we consider normal, regular business, every business has a website and uses that in different ways to support the actual business. And because people now use devices, the first thing you have to do, the first step in any mobile strategy is creating a mobile website, or at least establishing an effective presence in the mobile web. On top of that, you can still provide one or more mobile applications. But it would be like icing on a cake, but the cake is essentially remains the website, unless you are Instagram or similar kinds of business. Your business is centered around a native application. There are businesses like this, but it's not that regular scenario, the most common scenario. Okay, now, which are the options we have to make a website responsive to devices? Responsive web design as a methodology is definitely one option. It's nice because you say, how they sell it? Oh, one site, one brand, one code base. You create the site once, and more in some way, the sites adjust automatically because of the logic it contains, the CSS it contains, because of the JavaScript it contains. It just adjusts to the size of the screen size of the device and displays nicely. There is only one little issue. You have to rewrite the site. That's it. It works, except that you have to rewrite the site. If you have an existing site today and the site, say, is done using, web forms, you rewrite it, period. But even if it's done with PHP or other technologies where you don't have, I say web forms because in first place, web forms is one of the most commonly used platforms for building websites. Because I believe it's relatively familiar to the people attending this conference, but also because web forms has the characteristic of being based on server controls. And server controls have been created and designed and taught and devised at a time in which CSS was considered dead. HTML was considered just a piece of the part of the infrastructure. I remember very well when Web Forms was pushed out, the message was, thanks to Microsoft, you can forget about HTML. You can write web applications with no exposure at all at HTML and JavaScript. CSS what? We have ASP.NET Themes. I made a lot of money with my books, where I would say just ASP.NET Themes are the way to go. CSS is a thing of the past. Except that in a couple of years, the world completely turned around. I mean, sometimes, when I hear or read about what things that, Scott Guthrie, I know Scott, the vice president of Microsoft, says about we do this CSS, this or that. Scott, but do you remember when you and me were on stage together? Maybe. And we were saying the exact opposite of this kind of things that we're saying today. Okay, the world changes. But responsive web design is a beautiful idea, except that, well, to make it effective, it has to start from scratch. Doesn't mean rewriting from scratch the back end, the middle tier, because the business logic remains, if the site is the same, the business logic remains the same. You may need, however, to reconsider the topmost part of your middle tier, the one that is directly connected to the HTML, to the presentation. So, depending on you decide to use a lot of JavaScript client-side, things like Angular, then the JSON endpoint that feed your front end, well, they may be, if they don't exist today, they may be recreated or they may be extended or modified for the new interface you intend to apply in a new responsive website. If you don't have anything like that, you may need to create or recreate or extend significantly the application layer. But what is underneath that, including persistence, that doesn't need to be changed. But yet, it's a different story. You need to work yourself or hire a web agency to give you a template. You say, well, but there are so many free or semi-free templates out there that are nice and also resized nicely and beautifully on different screen sizes. True, but to be effective, a responsive site needs to have a strong idea. So ideally you need to have some good designer to do the work for you. And otherwise you really risk that you buy a template. Okay, you pay $50, okay, fine. But even if you pay $100, okay, it's okay, but it's a generic site, and you need to do some work on that to make it really smooth, as smooth as you need. And I say this because of direct experience. I have a company, and we provide IT services for sports, and one of the services we offer is okay, we do the website for the tournament, for the event, for this, for that. We offer that. And the website has to be mobile, we don't write the mobile website because it's, a week later the website is gone. So we typically buy existing templates that we like and we arrange the site around that. Or in some other cases we have our own designers, we have them to create 5-6 different templates, but similarly that can be connected to the same data endpoints, and they are responsive. But all websites look the same. The idea behind the website is just one. And to have a strong idea, a strong graphical idea, it's much more than just colors, rounded corners, shadows and colorful things. It's about the organization, the architecture of the information. So, I mean, responsive web design is an argument, is a point, is a topic, so easy to sell to customers if you're a salesman. But when it comes to implementation, it's not really trivial. And I would say more, it's not even effective if your goal, your purpose is optimizing, maximizing the mobile experience for users coming your way using mobile devices. Why? For the simple reason that, technically speaking, responsive web design works because of CSS Media Queries. Now, CSS Media Queries are a W3C standard, and essentially they consist in conditional CSS linking. So it's just a formal standard syntax that through which you instruct the browser to load and apply a CSS file only if certain conditions apply. And you express the condition that evaluates to a Boolean value, true or false, using, so which are the parameters you can use in the Boolean expression? The parameters defined in the standard, in the W3C standard for media queries. And there you find essentially two parameters. There are more, but the majority of them are just, in my opinion, pointless, and I've never seen anybody using any of those, except two. One is orientation, the other one is width. Others are height and even color depth. I think I never felt the need of switching the CSS because of the color depth of the browser. And same for the height. It could make sense, taking into account the height. So see if the viewport is higher than, but the viewport is the browser window. It doesn't take into account the scrolling, the press of the scroll bar. So even the height is not so common. It's a different story, orientation and width. So orientation will tell you whether it's portrait or landscape. And width will tell you about the actual width of the browser window. The browser window. So using CSS Media Queries, you can switch CSS if the device is rotated, or even if more in general, if the size of the window is a portrait with a height taller than wide, or landscape when is the opposite. The browser window. Responsive web design is so cool that it works really regardless of the device because it focuses on the screen size. So what? If you have a tablet 800 pixels wide and you have a browser window on a square meter desktop, you resize the browser window to 800 pixels, the rendering is exactly the same. So there's no difference at all for the web server underneath, for the web application that exposes a responsive web design, no difference at all between a tablet and a browser window in a super powerful computer, as long as the screen width of the browser is the same. On mobile devices, at least so far, every application runs full screen. So this makes the trick. But when you display on a tablet, or worse yet, on a smartphone, a website, even when the size of the screen is the same as a resized browser window on a desktop, you have a different CPU. You have typically a different connection to the internet, but just the CPU. Okay. It's not the same as a computer. So rendering and downloading is anyway small, even if you are connected on a Wi-Fi. it's a different experience. Not to mention when you are connected over 3G. You use a device, tablet, or worse yet, a smartphone on the go, or you also use that on the go. So there you are subject to the air, you're under the sky. And downloading 3 megs to hide half the quantity because the resizing the window, you just hide things. That doesn't sound like you're making a great deal. Because look here, I can kind of agree that when we move from this to this, so from desktop to a tablet, most of the changes are that there is less padding. So it could be that most of the time a regular website can display nicely on a tablet as is, unchanged. The only issue here are how easy to reach are the buttons for the finger versus the mouse. But here, I try to render it in the graphic the fact that some pieces of information have disappeared and other information has been laid out vertically. Okay, vertically makes for potentially long scrolling. And if the scroll here can be sometimes annoying on certain websites, imagine how annoying it could be on. So if you use the mouse wheel and in 3 rows I reach the bottom of our desktop site, and so I find it annoying, it takes me at least 3-4 times more to reach the bottom on a mobile. And if you don't do that, you can improve things on the smartphone just hiding blocks of information. So the nice thing is that you download things over a potentially slow connection for nothing, just for hiding that. This is the point, the real point behind responsive web design, which is a fantastic thing, but remains primarily a solution to make a website usable on the desktop when the user resizes the screen for whatever reason, to keep many applications on screen. Then, because the thing is nice, it's smart, in some cases it can work as is to provide a good enough experience on mobile. But if it's critical for you to establish an effective web mobile presence, because it's critical for your business, the last thing you can do is choosing responsive web design. So, at least it has to be, an important, so you need to have a great reasons to rule that out. To take this and to consider this over other options, the opposite. Because there are essential, it's counterintuitive using a responsive approach on mobile devices. Okay, now, the options you have are essentially 2. Creating a new site, so brand new project, built from the ground up with mobile in mind. And in doing so, responsive web design is one option. But there are other options that I'm going to consider and illustrate. Another approach is adding mobile to an existing site already in production, minimizing the effort in an unobtrusive way. If you choose this route, expect to be able to make it work well enough on some typically one class of devices. Not one device iPhone, no, one class of devices. And classes of devices are form factors like tablet, smartphones, mini tablet maybe. Just one category, okay, of devices. Because the idea here is create a separate website where you only focus on one or maybe two categories of devices, and then find some trick to switch between the two, so that you gain the benefit of responsive web design, one brand, so www.mysite.com, and it automatically, magically switches to the most appropriate site. Instead of forcing users to explicitly call the mysite.com URL or the www.mysite.com/mobile. Mobile sites. Okay, mobile what? I told you a moment ago, well, a few, maybe one, typically one, maybe two classes of devices. I would limit to smartphones, tablets, and feature phones. Feature phones are worse than anything older than a smartphone. Now, so when we say mobile, a mobile site is a site that can be consumed by any device. This is a much better description of what is commonly intended now by saying mobile. So there is a desktop, which is the full website, and then, which typically maps to computers, and then anything else. So the ability essentially to guarantee that whatever is the device that people use to come your way, the experience you offer is appropriate. This is a better, more modern meaning of the term mobile. And concretely, the answer you have to, the question you have to answer is, okay, what is my position for smartphones, tablets, and feature phones? One possible answer is, okay, I ignore features phone. So if the phone is an old one, Android 2.1, less than 400 pixel of screen width, I don't care. I don't know. I can treat those devices as smartphones. I try to serve them the smallest UI I can generate, and if it doesn't work, I don't care. Tablets. You can provide the tablet. You can provide tablets with the full site, or create yet another level of content. And then smartphones. For the most part, if you want to cut short, I would say smartphones deserve their own website. Tablets can be served the full site, maybe with some slightly different CSS files, just to make sure that buttons are large enough to be easily clicked, that there is no user experience that is annoying in any place, and features phone sometimes can be just ignored. Now, how would you build a mobile site? So a site specific for smartphones. There are frameworks to take into account. There is a bunch of technical features and content and functionalities. The first point to consider is, should I use Bootstrap or not? Bootstrap is fairly popular for building websites. If you already have a site today, chances are that you are already using Bootstrap. Should you use that? Bootstrap is over 100K, all considered. Script and CSS, minified. the full Bootstrap at least. Otherwise, there are CSS and DOM. So you write JavaScript against the DOM. You can do nearly whatever you can do with jQuery. Oh, jQuery is another problem. jQuery is another big chunk of data that means nothing. It's totally, it goes unnoticed, the download of jQuery in a regular site, but on a desktop or on a mobile, it can be a problem. Micro frameworks are an alternative. Micro frameworks are small. So to obtain the same set of features of, say, jQuery, you need maybe 10 or 12 or 15 micro frameworks. But they allow you to essentially just pick up the functions that you need that make your work easier. Because whatever you do, you need to do around a website can be done using CSS and DOM. And what frameworks do, jQuery the first, is offering you a much easier programming interface at the cost of extra code. Now, the extra code is totally negligible in terms of size, in terms of bandwidth, in terms of consumption. On a desktop, it starts getting important on a mobile website, especially when the type of business you're in expects that users connect to the site on the go, so typically under potentially slow connectivity. Another point to consider is, should it be a single page application, more or less hybrid, so total JavaScript or some web server pages full of JavaScript, and navigation between a few selected server-side pages takes place in the classic way through the browser, and then interaction within a few selected pages takes place using JavaScript and then DOM operations? Or should it be a regular plain ASP.NET, PHP, Java website where every page is downloaded and there's just a little bit of Ajax to keep it live and interactive? If you really need to target devices, I would say that an approach that is entirely based on MVC or typical server-side environment may take a while. So you experience, even if the page is fast and compact, and to the point that on a desktop you don't even see the difference, and it's extremely fast to render, it's hardly as much fast on a mobile device, and especially when you are under 3G. So I would say that this approach is probably the one you don't want to consider, or you want to consider only if anything else, for whatever reason, skills, for example, is not appropriate. Same for a full single-page application approach, because there's a lot of JavaScript that has to run on the client. And then the next problem becomes, okay, is it really confirmed that the set of, say, Angular JS features I'm using is supported on Firefox, whatever that the user may be using on a given phone? So the rule is the least you do within the browser, the best, and whatever you do, if you can achieve that using native tools, that gives you the best guarantee that it will work. So it's not obvious. And well, probably here, as far as the framework is concerned, maybe something in between these two approaches is the ideal. So you select a few pages which represent the entry point in some functional areas of the site, and you go to that page using plain browser-led navigation, so via URLs, via classic hyperlinks, and then once you are there, because that is a sort of entry point for an area of the function, all of the steps required for the achievement of that function takes place using JavaScript. So with divs that appear and disappear, with a limited data transfer and download and upload with the server. So JSON endpoints if you need data, and divs that appear and disappear to implement the modals or small in-page transitions. This is also the approach that years ago jQuery Mobile took, and it's a fairly common approach. So if it's common, I guess that is because it works, and I, on my end, can also say that if I try to reason about what could be a nice approach using, you know, rational rules, I would say that yeah, probably something in between these two is appropriate. Technical features, user experience. Now, when you create a website for a desktop, you tend to assume you have enough room on screen to put several controls for the user to select input data for starting a server-side operation. In a few moments, I will be just giving you an example of a site for booking a court in a sporting club. And there, you know, in a single page on a desktop, the user interface provides options for choosing the day. Okay, you want to play, nice, welcome, you want to play, okay. Which day you want to play, today, tomorrow? And there's a first input element for the user to choose. Next, you want to play single, double, you have a friend, you want to just lock the court, book the court, and wait for other people to join you. Say, for example, tennis. Do you have a partner or you're looking for a partner? So there are 3, 4, 5 distinct things, okay, that form an input, that make up an input form, and they may fit nicely and effectively in the same page on a desktop and maybe on a tablet. But on a smartphone, it's a problem for a number of reasons. Because of the small screen in first place, that which makes which reduces the size of controls and makes them, for the most part, display vertically. So, and then there is the problem of the keyboard that covers part of the screen. So it can be annoying to scroll up and down and type. So if you can reduce typing by providing options to click on, that would be preferable. But that's probably a different approach. It's a different experience, user experience. It's a different idea compared to regular websites. So it's a different user experience. Honestly, on desktop, when we write a web page, an HTML page, and we know it will display through desktop browsers, we don't even care, for the most part, if the input type has to be email, URL, number. It makes a huge difference. Okay, we know that these types are supported in HTML5, and that most browsers, with the notable exception of IE, fully support it. But it becomes, but we don't see a significant difference. Also because, say, the email type or the number type, even browsers that support that, Chrome, for example, okay, they provide, if you try to type something wrong in the field that does not accept by design that kind of content, you may get some messages from the browser, but there are browser-specific messages, even with some UI, some tooltips, balloons that appear. Another browser gives another difference, and other fields where you run your own check, maybe you display a different UI to users. So you want to also to unify, to provide a uniform experience, even in case of typing errors to users. So on a desktop, in a desktop scenario, you are in a way led to completely ignore the multiple input types defined in HTML5 with the purpose of giving users a uniform experience. Everything under your control. Every error message is under your control. But when you switch to mobile pages, to the same HTML page, but for a mobile perspective, well, everything changes, because if you say input type number, when browsers, mobile browsers display that page, and the user puts the finger on the input field to bring up the keyboard, it automatically gets the keyboard for numbers. And that is a significant help for users. It makes significantly faster for users to type just the number. They don't have to switch between parts of the keyboard. And this is one of the aspects I find particularly annoying in hotels or airport websites, where you have to type a PIN. They know the PIN is numeric because they text the PIN, okay, to enable the connection. It's a number. They know it's a number, yet they offer you a plain text field, and you have to switch the soft keyboard to numbers to type in. Same for emails. I mean, this is a feature that I recognize and really love in Windows Phone, but also Android. I mean, has something. I don't use iPhone, so I have no idea how it works on iOS. But for sure, Windows Phone and Android, when the type is email, they give you a keyboard where you have, for the most part, letters, but also the @ symbol or the / symbols if it's a URL already there with letters. By default, they will belong to yet another tab in the soft keyboard. So the browser typically tends to make the experience of users simpler, better, smoother, as long as you provide them with enough information at the HTML level. But this requires, from the developer standpoint, a different mindset. So you focus on building a page for mobile sites, but a long list of meta tags that you can put at the top, just in the head part of the page, okay, that instruct mobile browsers to expand, to remove the Chrome of the application on mobile devices, or to be automatically attached, linked on some devices and some operating systems to the list of applications, so that the website looks like an application. So there are several different things that you must start thinking. So summarizing, input is an issue, but also more in general, having a wizard-like approach to the tasks, which is not what you typically have when you think an application for the web desktop. And then the set of features, the use cases for a mobile scenario. It's hardly the same as a website you build for the desktop. And this is particularly true if you try to bring towards a mobile audience a website that requires interaction. So the responsive blah 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 is fantastic, especially for those websites and pages and segments of the website that are read-only. If you only have to present information that the user can scroll and read, responsive is much more effective than in scenarios where you have to have the user interact, fill out forms, enter data. In that case, you might want to focus specifically on a device and just use different algorithms, different wizards, different experiences, whether it's mobile or not. And you have to know whether it's mobile or not. So responsive just fails on this regard, in this area. Performance, performance. So whatever you do, should be taught in terms of performance, so minimizing download. That's critical. And this means, for example, that you might want to rewrite the JSON you download. I mean, I improved 25% the bandwidth, the usage of bandwidth, by simply renaming the methods on the JSON payload I was returning from a service. I mean, in JSON, if you have a property, you have a class, okay? And the property name is my beautiful integer number. It's my beautiful integer number, and you return an array of types with this property. You are multiplying my beautiful integer number for the number of items in the collection you return. Null. If a string is set to null, it's 4, at least 4 extra bytes. If it's the empty string, it's 0. Null is serialized as null, N-U-L-L. It's 4 bytes. Now multiply this by, if you return hundreds of items, well, just dropping nulls to, by shortening but not brutally, but just shortening the name of properties on the data transfer object and dropping and replacing nulls with empty string, I gain on a service 25%, same functionality, downloading 25% less data. So, and then minimizing the number of requests. Sometimes, for example, you don't want to use an image has a link, so via an img classic tag, but you want to use an inline image, especially for small chunks. In this case, if you use an inline image, which essentially means that you still have an img tag, but the source attribute doesn't take a URL, but it takes a string that contains essentially the base 64 serialization of the pixels of the image. There are pros and cons. In general, this is a don't do this approach kind of thing, because you lose the power of caching. Because the page is cached, but the image is not. And the image is repeated, the bytes of the image are repeated for every time they are used. But at the same time, everything is there, and everything downloads in a single shot with no need for the browser to request data multiple times. This is probably a small thing, but it's an example of how subtle it can be sometimes in a mobile perspective to optimize things, to keep performance at least acceptable. The goal here is not making the mobile site super fast or super optimized, but just avoiding things that can really slow it down. Content and functions. There is the 80-20 rule. Given an existing website, only 20% of the functions on average you have on the full site typically are appropriate for the mobile site. And whatever you want to have beyond the 20% can be mobile-specific use cases. So typically you consider 20% of the functions in the full site plus some extra features specific for mobile users that you don't have or don't have in that way on the mobile, on the full site. 20% and some brand new functions. Okay, let's go deeper into some of these aspects. Micro frameworks, micro JavaScript framework. There is the microjs.com website that is a sort of a repository of a few extremely compact JavaScript frameworks that just do one or two things. They are in a way the triumph of single responsibility principle. They do just one thing and possibly do it in a nice way, effective way, with the smallest possible amount of space. But I think that in general, when it comes to JavaScript, there is a sort of 99% syndrome that takes developers to consider that any good JavaScript framework is only 99% good. It always lacks that small feature that takes us to create ourselves, typically yet another JavaScript framework that has the missing 1% and then a fraction of the 99% we had in the other framework. So the summary is, the sum is that we keep on using and concatenating more and more and more and more JavaScript frameworks up to reaching, in some cases, the 1 meg of JavaScript stuff on a website. And I can provide evidence of some websites. I inherited a project in which 3 different versions of jQuery are used, and the moment I tried to drop 2 of them because it's still jQuery, don't ask me why, but the site stopped working the way it should. And I have really, I really don't want to explode it further. Okay, 3 jQueries, fine. It's desktop only, because we have, for the mobile, another approach, another solution taken. So when we figured out that no JavaScript framework offers 100% of the expected functionalities, we are led to building a new framework. Okay, micro frameworks are the same. So I mean, because they are micro frameworks, they do one thing, and for the other thing you need, you get another micro framework. So proliferation of micro frameworks and multiple micro frameworks linked from the mobile side are absolutely normal, but at least a micro framework is significantly smaller than a jQuery or jQuery UI or any other jQuery plugin, because the size of a micro framework is sometimes 1K, most commonly 2 or 3K. So very, very compact and small things. There are several of them linked together. Well, we have minification, we have bundles to make them compact together and form, from the browser perspective, one download. And this is a feature, bundling is a feature, bundling and minification, of course, it's a feature that is particularly important for mobile sites. Okay, they are important for whatever site, but in particular for mobile. Ratchet. This is a library that I found out, discovered recently, and I'm learning about. I haven't used this yet in any production because I'm new to it. But I feel like I suggest that you look into that as well, give it a try. Go ratchet.com. I like to call this the Bootstrap for mobile. So it's significantly more compact than Bootstrap, and it allows you to create mobile-specific websites using an approach to HTML design and programming very, very close, very, very similar to Bootstrap. So if you are familiar with Bootstrap, I'm not saying you will find the same CSS classes in Ratchet, but you will find several of the concepts in Bootstrap here, maybe with slightly different names, but you will find immediately at home. In particular, you find in Ratchet segmented buttons, and these are, well, it's not a chance that segmented buttons have been introduced by iPhone. Because iPhone, when it came out, it was so successful also because it was offering a user experience particularly well done, well thought for the finger, for users using the touch to interact with the device. Segmented buttons have been with iPhone since the very beginning. And, well, it's, in some cases, they are much better than a drop-down. Especially when you have only 3, 4, 5 options, you just click. It's a radio button-like feature. And you find them automatically implemented as a native part of the framework in in Ratchet. Notice that in Bootstrap, you have button lists, okay? So things that look like segmented buttons, but they exist only as far as the UI is concerned. So you can have buttons displayed, rendered as if they form a segmented button, but clicking and getting the state is up to you. Instead, in Ratchet, segmented buttons are a natural element of the system, and reading and writing and creating them is simplified. We have facilities for headers and footers, for tabs, any sort of lists, also Android and iOS specific themes. So by simply switching the CSS, okay, assuming that you know which kind of device you are on, you can give the website a look and feel specific for Android or specific for iOS. And also there are a bunch of other facilities for making the website look like applications, which means essentially predefined meta tags. So I mean, we know that if we Google, it's easy to find some meta tags that are interpreted in a particular way on iOS, Android by browsers. In Ratchet, there's nothing specific of in the library, but all the demos, the tutorials, the documentation uses those meta tags. So if you start following the tutorials there, it comes natural to just grab those meta tags and put them at the top of your web page, so that once served on a device, it's easy for the user to integrate the page, the site, with the other applications. Okay, let me briefly go through the Ratchet website just to Chrome, what are you doing? Chrome is against me today. So what the fuck is happening? Okay, let's use another browser. Started. So these are a couple of examples of the meta tags that I was referring to. So if you have those two things, which are part of the standard startup template for Ratchet, the page will be Chromeless once bookmarked to the phone home screen. And this is an example of a Ratchet page. Content and content padded are two classes that more or less map to the container class in Bootstrap. Card is, I think this is analogous and reminds the page class in jQuery mobile. So it's the div that contains a significant, it's the div treated like a page. So in most mobile libraries, the page is a logical component, so you can have in the same page you download from the server, the web server, you can have multiple logical pages, which are essentially divs, okay, that styled in a particular way. Page in jQuery mobile, card in Ratchet. can render full screen, and you can navigate from card to card, from page to page, with transitions, animations, just to simulate as much as possible a native application. And more importantly, without traveling, downloading, going back and forward to the web server. Of course, all cards, all pages are to be downloaded once when the core page of the application is downloaded first. So this is what was, this is a practical implementation of the pattern I mentioned before. Just one downloadable page, an ASPX page, an endpoint that gives you HTML, and in the HTML you have several cards or several divs that work like a page for you to interact in the context of that macro functional area of the site. Table view is a class that attached to a UL, LI, an ordered list, renders out as the classic list you find in iPhone, with badges, with chevrons to follow links. Creating those kind of things is quick, immediate, and you find here documentation. It would be nice to, if I can show you components here. You see, if this works much better in Chrome than it works. Okay, yeah, this is much better now. So this code here gives this effect. So you see, it's the header, it's bar nav, button pull left, button pull right, and that's it. More sophisticated things are this one here, where you can have an icon on both sides, or links and icons, segmented buttons with this simple markup, tab bar at the bottom, so it's nav class with a nav element of a specific class, AAAA, automatically rendered. So it's very close to what you do in Bootstrap, except that whatever you do is super optimized at the root for smartphones. But there's more. Okay, various flavors of tab bars, blocks, and typography. Table views, this is the classic table view. Just text with chevrons and badges, and both. But it's a UL, LI, just table view cell. Navigate right, and so forth. With images, this is great, and nearly the same as what you do, even simpler, I would say, than achieving this effect in Bootstrap. My favorite with icons as well, and my favorite, buttons, on, off. You can even slide and click. Various types of buttons, segmented controls with effect, so handling. So there's no JavaScript here, okay? But the switch between HTML content happens automatically. This is the code that offers this effect. No JavaScript at all. So this is what I meant when I said, well, you have segmented controls treated as a native part of the library. There is still some script, but the script is hidden in the single JS file you download and attach to the page. You don't have to write your own JavaScript to achieve this effect. That was the point. Okay, classic badges, forms. that can be combined together to minimize the space, also with labels. Okay, we have already seen toggles. Popovers. Okay. It doesn't work. Oh, and this is my favorite one, modals. So, modals are a feature that on modern websites are getting more and more popular. They are nice in desktop sites, so and so. On tablets, they are totally out of place on smartphones, except that you find an implementation for modals specific for smartphones. So when I say modals don't work well on smartphones, is the Bootstrap or jQuery UI modals. But here you have an anchor tag like in Bootstrap that is the trigger of the modal dialog box, and the href just points to a div, and the div is in a page. The div is content, and when you click this, the modal covers the entire screen. So it's like transitioning to another page without the burden of going back up to the server. And you can have everything here. This could be a form. This could be just a message box. And it only takes a combination of CSS. This has to be a button, and more importantly, this div has to be declared the content of a modal dialog box, and then the link is established via ed. Images can be combined and used to slide with a finger, with a touch, using the slide class, and you can use that to slide through divs horizontally in a typical gesture of mobile users. So in the end, some of the things you find in Ratchet are things you already find and know in Bootstrap, but the key difference is that Ratchet is mobile specific, smartphone focused, and more importantly, it allows you to create websites that look a lot like native applications. I'm not saying that with Ratchet you can create native applications around Cordova or PhoneGap or things like that. That's a different kind of problem. I'm just saying that you can provide an experience over the web using a user experience that is very close to the standard gestures and experience that users know from using native applications. But in terms of speed, in terms of even graphical rendering, a native application will be, will remain significantly better and smoother, faster. It's a different experience in terms of speed. But on the other hand, we are not talking about writing native apps using JavaScript or using the web. We are just thinking about creating a website, period. Three things to keep in mind, and these three things are the same: performance, performance, and performance. But there are three phases of performance. One is download, one is responsiveness, and one is usability. In the mobile space, the meaning of performance is a combination of these three factors. You can download the smallest possible amount of data, but if the site is not responsive, responsive also in this case means prompt to response, and it doesn't provide a nice usability. The controls, the elements, and the content to read and write is not easily accessible. You lose the the users tend now to judge bad site, and okay, it's a vote. Per se, single vote means nothing, but combined to others, it can even reach the point of affecting in some way the business. Okay, now let's say that we know enough on how to build a website, a separate website, a separate M site for to partner an existing website. How can we combine the two together? So essentially, one option is you link the new site for mobile devices, for smartphone devices, to a URL like moursite.com, or you deploy under a mobile sub-application. But the ideal is that you can still navigate to yoursite.com and have something else to route to the small site or the small chunk of pages, but even route to here or here. But the point is, without users explicitly call for this or this. Okay, this is a piece of code that works. It's not brilliant, it's not smart, but it works. Absolutely works. If you put this in your master page, or at the top of any single page, you measure the screen width, and you check that against a fixed size that more or less is not a tablet, and then you just redirect to another site. If you put this on the home page, you're okay. If users on a mobile type the full URL to a page within the site, it doesn't work. Typical. I mean, it's already hard, it's anyway hard to type long URLs on the mobile. So I mean, it could be just me, but I'm hardly able to type more than the root URL. So if I approach a website from the URL, this code just simply put in one page, the home will redirect automatically to the mobile site in a way that is totally transparent to users. But of course, you can still, I don't recommend that, but it still works if you place this code at the top of every page, and of course you redirect to the specific page that has been requested. You can even make this code smarter. You can grab the URL and combine and create programmatically that URL, but still you need to have that code repeated over and over again for each page if you want that to work for every page in the site. This is a smarter way. Look, when we have this and we happen to resize the page to a screen width like this, we see the effect. Well, let me see if I can give you live a demonstration of this. If I remember well, there should be this website that contains exactly that code. Okay. Yeah, probably the code has been removed. If I do. Okay, probably the code does not belong to this side. There's the risk with this code that if this code is evaluated and at that point the screen width is less than this value, you go to the mobile site regardless of the device, even on a desktop. This is a better approach because it uses a library called Woolful.js to do device detection. And in this way you can do the same, but in this case you do that only if it's a smartphone or whatever you want. Now, Wooful.js looks like JavaScript code, but it's not JavaScript code. It's essentially an endpoint to this website. So the trick is, when browsers encounter this instruction, this that looks like JavaScript content, it makes a request to this URL. And in making the request, the browser passes the user agent. So, on the other side, on Wooful.io, the user agent is captured. Wooful runs server-side a sophisticated device detection algorithm and analyzes the user agent and figures out whether the requesting browser is a smartphone, a tablet, and there are a few other options. No. Okay, I can take this. Wooful.io, Wooful.js. Yeah. Essentially, what the final effect of that script line is injecting in your page, in your DOM, a JavaScript object that contains these three properties. Complete device name, the name the device is known by, something like iPhone. Okay, it's a valid name. Or Apple iPad, Apple iPhone, something like that. So if you want to distinguish Android or iPhone, you can use this string to make detection good enough to, for example, use with Ratchet the iOS theme or the Android theme. More importantly, form factor, which returns any of the following. It's a desktop, it's an app, so the page is being viewed in a web view contained in an app, in a native app. Tablet, smartphone, feature phone, so not smart as a smartphone, but yet a cellular phone. It's a smart TV, it's a robot, it's other non-mobile, I don't know, so it's not, maybe it could be, I don't know, Xbox, I think Xbox falls in the smart TV range. But yeah, other non-mobile could be something like Xbox. Other mobile could be something like Google Glasses. And so this said, if we go back to the slide. So Wooful is the name of the object with those three properties injected when this script is processed by the browser. So if Wooful equals smartphone, at that point you do the redirection. By the way, the Wooful library is totally free, so it's okay to use this as is. And there is, if you want to be guaranteed a certain level agreement, then there is the availability of a commercial license. But for testing and even for going production, as is, the service provided as is totally free. And by the way, Wooful.js is the client-side segment of a larger framework that specializes in device detection, which is available also as a NuGet package for ASP.NET development server side. And it has a cloud offering with an API for ASP.NET, but also for Java, PHP, a variety of languages. It's a cross-platform framework, and it's the framework that Google, Facebook, Twitter, Amazon, Akamai use. Twitter, for example. Twitter is the company who created Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is a library that heralds responsive web design. But Twitter doesn't use responsive web design and Bootstrap on their mobile site. They take an approach closer to this. I don't know the details, of course. I'm not supposed to know the details of how Twitter implement the sites internally. But they do redirection. LinkedIn does the same. They provide a mobile experience that is not simply an adaptation of the ideal desktop experience. But at the same time, those who decide to provide a single responsive experience are not necessarily doing it wrong. What is wrong, and I think it's really something I like to fight as an evangelist, is the perception that responsive web design is the only thing we need, and thanks God we have it. No, you do device detection? Nah, it's a thing of the past. Nah, it's when, remember 10 years ago, we had to check browsers, check user agents, and then decide what to do. Now, with responsive web design, we have everything we need. We don't need to detect devices. This is a short-sighted vision. It's even stupid, I would say. Then, this said, you evaluate the options and then you decide. And whatever you decide, it's okay, as long as it comes out of evaluating the various options. And my purpose here is just showing you that there is life and opportunities and chances of doing things good, well, ideally well, beyond responsive web design. And now, this is a screenshot that I took a few months ago from it's a remote desktop screenshot of the IIS of one of the servers that my company has. As you can see, this is the bin folder of an ASP.NET MVC website. And as you can see, the date last, in Italian, but it's last modified 2010. Okay, for more than 4 years ago. Okay, now you can trust me or not, but if I go, you can try that on your own smartphones if you want. Try visiting this URL. Let me put out in a way that everybody can read it. Where is the font? The website, when you visit that with a computer, is this one. Okay. I logged in, so what you find there is you should get a landing page for the mobile site. Okay. I will simulate that on screen using the change of the user agent on the browser in a moment. Excuse me?
About 500 there.
No, probably you missed the www. Okay. Yeah.
I'm trying to worry you. I'm trying to worry you.
So this is the website, and this is the front end for a booking site, where in the same page, I'd like to play when, time slot, show me also slots available to join as a partner. So someone has booked the court but is looking for a partner. And then find a court to open up this, and then I can click and see everything happens in the same page. And this, I have some interaction only when I click here. Okay, thanks God. Okay, if you want, you can try, if you log in, try with Nadal and Rafa as the password, everything lowercase. I get this, and this is the way in which I made my reservation. Okay, this is the website of which the screenshot on the slides belong to. At some point, this is the full screenshot with another file added December 2014. Just one DLL dropped in the bin folder 4 years later with just 3 lines of code added to webconfig. Just saying, we now have an HTTP module with a given name, and this is the name, the nickname implemented in the EasyCore mobile router class in Easy Mobile Router DLL. That's been enough to essentially add a router on top of any call being made to the website. And the effect is precisely what some of you have already tested. So now, let me show you live what happens. Okay, let's say that I drop this entirely. Okay, let's close. Let me open up a fresh new browser window. Let me configure this browser window to behave like, let's say, a Windows phone. So this means this is the F12 developers tool of Internet Explorer. So in this way, I'm saying, look, when from this instance of the browser you connect to a website, instead of sending your standard user agent string, send the user agent string of IE11 has installed as it ships to Windows Phone. So you're now a browser. You're now the browser on a mobile device. So this is a way to simulate on screen what you can test on your own devices. Okay, so now I type expoware.org. I'm sorry, no, it was easycourt.net, Contoso, English. This is what I get now. The URL is Contoso EM on another browser, not configured to look like a mobile device. I was getting a totally different response. So this page follows the standards. So you are requesting a page that doesn't seem to be ideal to the device you're using. Would you go to the full site, or would you go to a mobile device? You can even just redirect directly to the mobile site if you like. So if I choose to go to the mobile site, I'm displaying this. So I now switched. The URL is always the same. But Nadal, Rafa, log on. And now I'm offering a totally different experience. The user can book a court, can review bookings, or leave a message, and then can see immediately if there are messages from the club. For example, there's a medical certificate alert, or maybe there's a summer party scheduled next week. These are not features one-to-one with the website. The website doesn't have anything like this. But it means that along the way, by simply modifying the back office, I can have, so the site remains static, unchanged, but the back office, which is a separate site, can be updated to maybe provide a mechanism that pushes information to the website by simply writing on a database, on a separate database table, that this page reads from to populate this drop down. So when I say push messages, don't think of push notification services and complex things. It could simply be a plain stupid couple of rows written on a database and just read at the right time. So when I click to book a court, it shows me, okay, today, okay, tomorrow, which time, afternoon, lunchtime, evening, find courts. Okay, and this is not really making a query, but just showing you. I mean, this is a proof of concept, okay, that I take it from the website because this is a demo site, just that I use just to show that it's definitely possible. And this is the way we do it. We did it. A 5 years old website was brought to a second life and being added. A mobile site with basically no effort and without touching a single byte, a single binary on the site itself. It was everything that was done was a separate project, separate Visual Studio project. This is a separate website, totally this, with no point. Only the database has it. They have in common only the connection string to the database. That's it. Everything else is different. This is using, I think, Ratchet. For the user interface, and it has nothing to do with Bootstrap, nothing to do with, okay, the pages that have a distinct URL are served by an MVC application, ASP.NET MVC application, but internally the cards are just managed by Ratchet. I can also have a new function, okay, the balance to get quickly, because in the website you can of course know what is your balance. So if you have to recharge your card to be able to book courts, but to do that you have to log in and then you have to navigate to your profile page. But on a mobile you push a button and then you get immediately the number, or maybe history of bookings, or okay, history here, history, so your last 10 bookings. So this is more or less information that is already available on the website, just reorganized in a way that fits better with the experience expected by a mobile user. Everything in 2 or 3 clicks away, which is a good rule, a golden rule of mobile website development. And in terms of source code, this is the tool that did the magic. It's an HTTP module that hooks up the onBegin request. So this module kicks in once registered in the ASP.NET pipeline. It kicks in for each and every request, and transparently, and essentially it just checks whether the request is coming from a mobile device, and if it comes from his mobile device is true, then it has some more sophisticated logic to check whether to support the scenario in which, okay, I'm using a mobile device but I want to see the full site. Okay, so all the lines that I use, so these two ifs essentially serve the purpose of supporting the scenario, okay, I am a user coming your way using a mobile device, but I want to see the full site. So to remember this information, I write a cookie that keeps on coming my way, so that, okay, it's a mobile device, but the user already told me that he wanted to see the full site. So I skip redirecting to the mobile page. The first time it's a mobile device, I go to the mobile landing page, and otherwise, if nothing happens, the request passes this filter and goes to the and is processed. Now the nice thing is, if the first time I go www whatever it is, nice, I go there and I can choose the mobile site. And in this particular case, the mobile site here is deployed as under mobile sub-application. So it controls en/mobile, and then that is the physical location of the website. At that point, once the mobile UI has been displayed for the first time, all the links from there are still based in the mobile sub-application. So the problem is only the first time, deciding whether I want to go to the mobile or keep on using the full site on a mobile device. But once I've been there the first time on a mobile site, I'm done, because any further navigation I do from there following the links in the application, it's a different story if I just retype the URL in the address bar. But as long as I navigate using the UI of the application, I'm guaranteed to stay within the boundary of the mobile app, no matter the filter I have here, because the filter kicks in any time, but it passes through. Just a few lines of code. The most tricky part of this is the requesting mobile. Is this module here. This is the tricky part, and the tricky part here is not tricky at all. It's fairly simplistic, because I'm not using here any smart way to detect if a device is mobile. What I'm doing here is simply checking whether the user agent contains one of keywords suspicious that probably, if contained, make up for a mobile device. But for example, I have no way here to distinguish between an Android smartphone and an Android tablet. It's both contain Android, but who knows which one is the right one. So at this point, to make this code better, I need to rely on some framework server side that gives me device information. Wurfel has this option, but it's not a free option server side. It's free client side, it's not free server side. There are several options. You can buy personal license, you can buy a cloud subscription. But okay, once you have that one, that subscription enabled, all you have to do is downloading a NuGet package, which gives you an API for detecting server side. So you query, it's a line of code, you query the API here, you figure out whether it's a smartphone, tablet, whatever it is, and at that point you can check whether it's iPhone 5, iPhone 6, if it's on whatever type of Android it is. If needed, you can check that. You can even check capabilities. Has the device support for video streaming? You get that. There are over 500 different capabilities for each device that the framework, the Wurfel framework, tells you about. So this happens. It gives you full details of the operating system, the version of the operating system, the version of the browser being used, because it could be Firefox mobile or Safari mobile, or it can be the Android stock browser. So you can get potentially all this information. Probably for the purposes of the mobile router, all you need is knowing whether it's a smartphone, a tablet, or something else. But you can do this and even more with a server-side detection tool.
Just one point. Wouldn't
Yep.
that also redirect Chromebook to your mobile site, because Chromebook would report that it's running Android?
Excuse me?
Chromebook would say it's running Android, would it not?
I'm not sure.
A Chromebook? Google Chromebook.
Chromebook?
Yes. It's a laptop from Google that runs on an Android platform.
Yeah, okay. No, okay. This is not really reliable code, absolutely. But it will work, yeah, more or less it works. Typically in conferences it works. But this is not the code we have in the real site. In the real site, we use Woodfall to do device detection. Yeah, this is just not. But I mean, but at the same time, if you Google for device detection, most of the suggestions that even the JavaScript frameworks you find out are very similar. They have a longer list, significantly longer list of keywords, but they work with the same pattern, which is not necessarily working in all cases. Okay? Good. Sounds like I'm done. Sounds like, yeah, I displayed everything. Yeah. And well, that's it. Thank you very much for your time, for staying here, even it's 10 minutes late. Hope you see you tomorrow. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.